Hello and welcome to the All Things Strongman podcast. I am your host, Adam. As always, I feel like I've not introduced myself enough, so I'm going to start doing that a little bit more. Thank you so much for the views that we've had over the last sort of couple of weeks. Obviously, we've had two of the Arnold US competitors on in the last two episodes. We had Erin Murray, who we were talking to one of her training partners very, very soon. And we had Thomas Evans, who we had an absolutely amazing reaction to on social media, and the views have been absolutely incredible. So I want to thank everybody that's taken the time out of the day to listen to those podcasts. But enough about what's come before. We have a very special guest today. He is currently America's strongest man. He's an absolutely up and coming force in the strongman world. It is, of course, Lucas Hatton. How are you doing, pal?
Doing great, man. Doing really good.
Yeah, it's taken a couple of times to get that intro just to peek behind the curtain for everybody. For some reason, I'm not great with my words today, but Lucas is sat here very patiently listening to me flub my words. But first of all, we've got a couple of interesting competitions coming up for yourself. And one of those is in just over a week's time now is the
Hmm.
Arnold UK show. How are you?
Yes.
How are preparations going? How are you feeling about that show?
Uh, Feeling very good. I went out to the Arnold, Ohio, with my coach, Alec. We had to work with Aaron, Inez. We had a couple in the amateur show. Maybe not the smartest thing to do 2 weeks out from a show, because anyone who's gone to coach at a large show knows that's just as stressful as competing. Um, Came down a little sick this week, but still getting in these last couple good training sessions. Had a huge log day yesterday, big farmers carry PR yesterday, and then just two more sessions tomorrow and Saturday. Just a little tune up, and it's going to be go time. Could not be more excited. It was kind of cool to be in the back in Ohio. I know a lot of those pros, a lot of those guys. But it was nice to kind of, you know, see the more human side of these dudes because you
Yeah.
just see them on TV or on YouTube. And just it was really cool. I'm glad I went, and I'm feeling mentally in a really good spot about this show coming up.
Nice. It's really good to hear that you're hitting those bigger sort of PBs in training, ready for this show.
Hmm.
Because we've all heard it before. The Arnold's sort of one of the heaviest shows over the
Yes.
strongman calendar, and I'm sure the Arnold UK show is just as heavy as the
Hmm.
US one. Has heavyweights ever bothered you going heavier in shows? Obviously, you'll have hit a couple of heavy shows in the US scene.
Yeah, like I'm usually better if it's about 5 to 10% heavier than like the standard pro show. So like
Yeah,
where like a Giants Live might be,
yeah,
I would consider that kind of usually on the lighter side. Like if they're doing like a loading race, it's like 300 pound or in your term like 145 kilo or 150 kilo sandbags. That's pretty light.
yeah.
But if you make a medley where it's a 350 sandbag and a 400 sandbag, I'd be better in that show. Like so, kind of in the context of the Arnold, I'm like especially on like a log or something like that. If it's in that 400 plus range, I'm gonna do better overall in the show than like a 330 for reps, more than likely. So I'm actually really excited. I think for the Arnold circuit to kind of be my first big jump into the major shows, I think it's the right show for my skill set. I think in the same vein, I think I'd really excel in like a strongest man on earth.
Hmm.
Um, like if I went to like Worlds a lot of the times is on the lighter side. It's
Yeah.
a little faster. That's some of the guys complain about that. I think I do well, but I think this kind of currently fits my skill set.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, you mentioned there it's your first sort of foray into the major
Hmm.
pro shows. It's almost your debut in these kind of more well-known shows, I'd like to
Sure.
say.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that sort of pressure and that sort of mentality and almost switch into this bigger audience? I'm sure you'll be aware that there's obviously be a few thousand in the audience, many more watching
Hmm.
at home. Not to kind of put the pressure on you, sorry if that feels like
Yeah.
it's
No. No. And honestly, I'm excited and I'm enjoying it. It's what's nice is prior to this, like I for a lot of people watching, I'm probably relatively unknown, especially if there's people over in the UK. They just know I'm America's Strongest Man, and that's about all I've heard. But through like OSG, through America's Strongest Man, through North America's. I mean, I've competed against over 10 World's Strongest Man competitors in the last 12 months, and I've beaten six of them.
Mm.
So as far as the competition and the guys I'm going against, not nervous in that sense. Sure, it's a little different thing when it's Thor and Hooper, that's like about as top tier as it gets. Um, but at the end of the day, they're just human. They're guys that make mistakes. They're guys that get sore, guys that get hurt. As far as the crowd goes, it's probably the biggest in-person crowd. I mean, at North America's, they have a massive crowd. That show does not get enough love. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm in a sense I'm nervous, but more so I'm just excited. Um, it's something I've believed I was ready to do for a while, and now it's time to prove it, and I'm just excited.
Yeah, I know that's one thing. Just for people at home, me and Lucas talk a little bit on Instagram through DMs, and I've done over the last sort of 6 months, especially
Hmm.
sort of since the North America Strongest Man show. Sort of we almost like keep in touch a little bit,
Hmm.
let's say. And the one thing I kind of get from you is that you're ready to take this next step. You're very mentally prepared
Hmm.
for this step up into these bigger shows. You've almost been chomping at the bit to really
Hmm.
get a chance, and I know that's one thing for you. Find your react. What was your reaction when you first got that invite to this Arnold UK show?
And it was kind of funny. So I'd heard through the grapevine that a couple guys had been invited to Ohio. Obviously, I have Angelica and Aaron at the gym, so they kind of I could get the sense that they had already been contacted. They obviously couldn't tell anybody. Um, so I was like, wow, they're already reached out to. There's no chance I'm getting in. I see the Arnold Ohio invites. I'm like, well, not a chance. And then I guess I was kind of thinking that UK was still on the table because my initial thought was they would do probably like they consider the Arnold maybe top 10 guys in the world. And they might do like the next 10 guys for the UK. At the time, I didn't know that they were planning on doing basically the same roster.
Yeah,
I get contacted from Jan Todd. I got that email and I was kind of blown away. Because I just had the sense that I'd been doing a lot of networking, social media, kind of vouching for myself, a couple people vouching for me, um, that none of it was really sticking.
mm.
And then got the email from Jan, and I was like, okay, it's time to go. And I had to keep it quiet for like a week and a half, and that was about the hardest thing. Um, yeah, man, I was basically just I knew like, at that point I didn't think I was going to get any invites until North America's, so I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, time to train, and then the invite came.
Oh, amazing. You talk about this lineup, and you mentioned saying it's very similar to obviously the US Arnolds over in Ohio that took part this weekend.
Hmm.
You was there. Just speak about how incredible that competition was just last weekend. How amazing was it to be in person there watching these incredible athletes compete?
It was it was a cool show, and I at there was Hooper put out a YouTube video prior about his predictions, and he said that he thought he was the only person capable of running away with the show. And I did my own predictions video on YouTube, and I thought, no way anyone runs away with that show
Yeah.
because it was just marketed as the most competitive show possibly ever, and you know what he did? He ran away with it. But I think it was interesting to have that in the back view of the show. The amount of guys that showed up maybe a little hurt or more hurt than they admitted.
Mm.
The amount of guys that throughout the show were probably a little more hurt than they admitted. Um, there's event categories that you thought guys would do well and they shanked it. It's just it's such a heavy show with
Mm.
this show, UK. Some of these guys are doing Europe's and then Worlds. You can tell that a lot of the guys are burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And to beat a guy like Hooper, you need to be dialed in 100%. And you could see that they weren't. There was these flashes in the pan of guys being incredible, but it was really interesting to see it in the back. But I don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss specifics of like how guys are feeling because that's on them if they want to announce if they're hurting or not or whatever. But it's just there was a lot of layers going on in the back that I don't think people were aware of, and it was pretty interesting to see. And at the end of the day, Hooper pulled it off. Mateusz did fantastic, pulled back after a deadlift performance, as he's so good at doing. Um, Tom not doing too bad on the second day, pulling it through, and Thor just off the podium. And I think if that pec tear didn't happen, I think Thor is probably second in that show.
Yeah.
I still don't think he's in the shape to win, but it's interesting to see Thor coming off a fresh injury and still being one of the best in the world because he's still Thor, and I think people forgot that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that first event when he's the only man that pulls over 1,000 pounds, it's like, oh
Hmm.
wow, 4 years out of the sport, Thor is still very much Thor.
Yes, yes. And
Man.
it's like I don't know if he had a financial incentive to get a big pull. I mean, I'm sure he for himself, he probably just wanted to show everybody who he
Yeah.
is and like that he's back.
Mm.
And I'm sure that was like a huge moment for him mentally. It's cool to watch him in the back. He's very it's like, it's been 3 or 4 years since he competed. It was almost like he never took that time off. Like
Wow.
Team Iceland was back there moving and grooving, warming up. It was like no, didn't seem like there was any visible jitters. Yeah, it was cool to watch. It was the first time I'd seen him compete in person, so it was cool.
Yeah, seeing that Team Iceland shirt on the live stream as I was watching from home in the UK, it did just very much seem like he had just almost pretty much transported himself from 4 years ago to now. He seemed
Yeah,
cool, seemed calm, seemed like it was just another day at the office, which is very much Thor's way of
yeah.
competing, I think. But yeah, for you watching that, I mean, it's got to drive you on seeing those guys at that big US show, that big Ohio show.
Hmm.
I'm sure the excitement then just grows in yourself,
Oh yeah,
knowing in
yeah.
like 2 weeks' time it's you competing against these guys.
Hmm. Yeah, could not be more excited. And you know, um, there may be a couple guys. I mean, you saw if you were watching the live stream, there's a couple guys, grabbing biceps or
Yeah,
something tweaked or they pulled out. So I think that UK roster in these final days might evolve a little bit.
yeah,
Um, I caught some conversations of some other pros at the Arnold or out in the scene that like might get a late invite. I don't know if they're actually committing to doing that because I know initially that's why they invited 11,
yeah.
so that if anyone pulled out, they had the built-in reserve.
Mm.
But if they're losing three, four, maybe five guys, um, which they could after Ohio, like they might have to pull in some guys late in the game. I'm curious what happens in these next few days. I think these events are a little too heavy and specific for someone to just jump in off the street and do well. I'm trying to think of anyone who could. Um,
Yeah.
Probably Matt Ragg. If Matt Ragg shows up to any show on the planet, he's probably a problem.
Yes.
But I can't see him, taking that invite that short of notice,
No, and it's
especially
getting
coming across the world.
yeah. You beat me to it. I was literally about to say, and it's getting him over from New Zealand,
Hmm.
Australia to
Yeah,
come
but
to Birmingham.
this guy would be a little nervous if Matt Ragg got added very late because these events just the heavier it is, Matt Ragg is ready to win.
Yeah,
I think if I had to say who was missing from that most competitive Arnold roster ever, I think Matt Ragg was the biggest miss of that Ohio roster. The next one for me would be probably Austin Andrade.
yeah,
Not a lot of people know him or give him as enough credit. He hasn't really done as much internationally. He got to do that Giants Live,
yeah,
but I think in the next year or two, that's the name that you're going to hear a lot. And in an Arnold style heavy 5 event show, like a Matt Ragg and an Austin Andrade are a problem for everybody.
yeah. Matt Ragg really showing at Worlds this year and at the World Tour Finals, Giants Live World Tour Finals, how dangerous he can be. Austin
Hmm.
Andrade obviously won the Open, the Shaw Classic Open. Will
Hmm.
get a chance at that strongest man on earth show. Hopefully, I think that's how they're running it. The Open winner almost
Yeah.
automatically got an invite. And yeah, he's got a world's invite as well this year, I believe, as Austin.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm excited to see how he goes. I got a chance to meet him a little bit at the Giants live show that he did. Seems like a really
Hmm.
nice guy as well,
He is.
which is
Yeah.
amazing. Um, and yeah, you alluded to there could be some changes in this Arnold UK lineup, both for the men and the women, because obviously
True. Yeah, yeah.
a
They're going to
couple of
lose some
those.
women too.
Yeah, because I think I saw that Mel Peacock put out that she'd accepted a late invite to do the UK show. Whether or not she does take it up or not, not too
Hmm.
sure. So I'm sure those announcements will come out shortly. I mean, we
Hmm.
are what about 10 days away from the show, so they need to get a
Yeah.
wriggle on
Yeah.
if they're going to announce those changes.
Hmm.
Just a word on the women's show, in the women's pro show again. After the debut last year, I did wonder. I thought, is there going to be the same excitement? Are they going to be able to
Hmm.
perform? And I mean, they exceeded what they did last year, I thought. And it's amazing to see the pro strong women get that sort of audience and get that sort of platform to really showcase what they can do and just show that it is as great as strong man as well.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It was. I think it's two years in a row where I was more entertained by the women's show. Um, I think the women. I mean, yes, there was women that got hurt and had to pull out, but I think on the men's side, sometimes the sport turns into who just doesn't break because a lot of
Yeah,
guys kind of train stupid or just do too many shows or whatever reason you want to say. The women's side, I think from the beginning of the show, there was just more people who had a genuine shot of winning that show. And who would have known um, Roberts would come in and be a little tweaked. And I would like in my predictions, I had her one or two, but she
yeah,
kept that injury kind of close to the chest. Who would have known Andrea would zero a dumbbell?
yeah,
And I thought that was her show to win at that
yeah,
point. AJ Angelica Jardine winning 2 out of 3 of the final day and setting a huge personal best on the dumbbell, like exactly what she needed to do, but to win by half a point. I mean, I did my predictions on that show, and I stand thoroughly corrected on 2 people, or 3 people. I kind of counted out Olga, which I now realize is pretty much a mistake.
yeah, I do.
No, Angelica Jardine, I thought she was just too green, even though I train with her all the time and I see her in the gym, won the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, and the final one, I think it's just because she doesn't compete as often or hasn't in the last year. I didn't have Hannah Lindsay even close to as high as she finished. She was genuinely impressive, and yeah, it was crazy. I could not be more wrong on how I predicted that show, and it was just cool to watch.
Yeah, I think the jeopardy of going into that sort of final event with still quite a few of the women being able to win
Hmm.
and obviously the fight for the podium. Obviously, as the men's show progressed, it was basically going to the last event. We knew Mitch was pretty
Yeah.
much secured to win. So there's that excitement went. But to have sort of Angelica, Lucy, Olga all battling for that win. You had obviously
Hmm.
you've mentioned Hannah Lindsay, you've mentioned obviously a little bit of maybe a little bit of a disappointment for Rebecca. Obviously, we lose Victoria Long in the deadlift again with
Ah,
what looked like a hamstring
right
injury,
off the jump. Yeah.
and that almost takes her completely out of it. Where I think everybody would have expected Victoria as the reigning champ as well to go well
Hmm.
again. I feel like the
Yeah.
world of strong woman really is coming into its own.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. It's like I think my predicted podium was Roberts, Andrea, and Victoria. And I like who would have known those things could happen? It's such a crazy sport. And as soon as like that door opens, those girls took advantage of it and got some big points where it counted and they just shuffled everything. I don't think anybody would have predicted how it ended up. And it's so exciting to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned there that obviously you train with Angelica, you and with Inez, with Erin.
Hmm.
For you as sort of coming from that sort of group, how great is it to have sort of three really top women in the sport all competing in the same show?
It's 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 just it's incredible to just have when you get to this level and there's only 10 invites per gender, like the the odds of having a quote unquote team at the show is just so low. There's not many groups. I mean, like there's a couple actually at the show. I mean, there was coaches that had more than one athlete in the show,
Mhm.
but just having three that are um, me and Nez and Aaron are coached by Alec, and AJ is coached by Zach McCarley at our gym, but we all kind of train together. It's just, we got people to load weights for each other. We got people to watch the floor and check times and count reps and do all those things. If you don't think strongman's a team sport, you're not doing it very well. It's totally a team sport on game
Yeah.
day. Like there's so many little things that having that whole support staff. I mean, there's a reason why Thor and his team Iceland do so well. For us
Cool.
now, it's just is multiple people actually competing, and it's just a special environment. And like I won Americas, did well at North Americas, and I'm like the fourth or fifth most accomplished person on the in the group. And it's just I got so many people to look up to and train with that I'm just incredibly blessed where I'm at and the people I'm working with.
Yeah, you mentioned America's Strongest Man there, and we alluded to it in the intro. Obviously, you are the
Sure.
reigning champion of America. Um, and I'm sure if anybody's not seen the video of the winning moment of you obviously finishing the power stairs, you have that moment of absolute overjoy where you shout and obviously you're excited, but then you see the sort of emotions hit,
hmm
then you start to almost cry a little bit. What did it mean to you to win that show?
I had not won a contest since I was competing in parking lots
Wow.
at the local level. Um, and it's kind of a running joke with my dad. He just gives me a hard time. It's in good spirits. He's my biggest supporter,
Yeah,
but he jokes that I'm the best in the world at getting second.
I
So
love it.
back to like middle school, high school, college sports, I kept just doing bigger and bigger things, but I got a lot of seconds.
Yeah,
And then amateur nationals in strongman, second. Amateur Arnold by the smallest margin possible, second. OSG, I got fourth, which top three go to Giants Live. Might
yeah.
as well be second. Um, and then North America's second to Trey, which over 8 event show with multiple World's Strongest Man competitors. I wasn't bummed about that one.
No.
I thought podium at that show was first for me, and then America's, it was at a time where I needed the money, financially, just running my business at the gym and coaching. It's been a struggle for a really long time. Um, America's had a fairly large prize purse. I wasn't planning on doing the show. Some life stuff happened, and I was like, okay, I need this money. These are good events for me. I entered 6 days before the show.
Wow.
Like they didn't even have a comp shirt for me because I entered that late. Um, I did no prep for the show. I did like a tune-up session where I did a little bit of axle, a little bit of dumbbell, a little bit of yoke, and I went. And I knew I could win. Because admittedly, those are good. All of it was good events for me. And I thought I could beat those guys, but I knew like with Crowder and Rob and a couple other pros there, like it was going to be a battle.
Mhm.
And I think that emotion just hit me because it's just like I finally did the thing that I knew I could do. It just took me a couple years to earn that moment. I hadn't earned it yet. And like that was like what I'd been saying I was capable of doing. I finally got to do it. And it hit me all at once, man. Like
Yeah.
I get emotional talking about it now. And inevitably that win led to this invite, not directly, but it helped get me on people like Jen Todd and Steve Slater's radar.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's what wins like those do. Winning those big national titles
mhm.
open doors to bigger and better things, and it can take just that one competition to almost
Yeah.
change your direction and change the. Tr I would have said try and say a word that I cannot say. Then, but change.
Trajectory.
Thank you. You know exactly what I was trying to say, and
Yes.
I bottled it and I backed out of it. But yes, it changes the direction of your career and exactly how much you can almost earn and I spoke a little bit to Erin about wanting to turn this strongman career into a profession, and
Mhm.
she talked through the different avenues that obviously the strongmen and strong women of the world kind of go down, and prize money is not the be all and end all. It cannot be
Mhm.
relied on because obviously you go to shows and you never know what's going to happen. There's that unpredictability of whether or not an injury happens and puts you out or and things like that. So it's and I know you and Erin are very similar in that way. You're trying to grow your social media and sort of become these grow those channels to be able to be more appealing to sponsors and make it into a um, professional job that you can almost put more time
Yeah.
and effort into the competing side of things. Then, um,
Yeah.
how do you find juggling that sort of in your life?
You know, I think in some sense I've jumped on the sponsors a little bit less than
Mm.
Erin. I mean, mind you, she's got way more offers because, she's done more.
Yeah.
And she has a bigger following and she's been in the sport longer. Um, but I think in some sense, I'm kind of sponsoring myself in the like running the gym, Dungeon
Mm.
Strength. I'm so fortunate for those, like the two guys that own that gym had no reason to let me buy in and be a part
Yeah.
of it and be a part of the team. But they did. And at the start, they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford to pay me what they were paying me to run the gym. But they did it. And I think it was them kind of believing in me. So my first real sponsor was Dungeon Strength. It was my gym that is I'm now get to be a part owner of and run. And so through that little salary that we're able to pay myself and the coaching I get to do out of that space, that's my first sponsor. Like I get to say I do strongman full time because I do, right? But
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's cleaning a gym, sometimes it's coaching out of the gym, and sometimes it's prize money. Sometimes it's, a brand reaching out and being excited. That hasn't happened a lot yet, but it'll come. But yeah, I think I'm not super stressed about growing the social media or, battling for every dollar I can get from sponsors now. Because I think if I just keep doing well competitively and get to some of these major shows, that's probably the most effective way I could grow my following. And right now, like with my following now, if a sponsor says, I'll give you free stuff but no money, that's not insulting. That's just being
Mm.
honest
Yeah.
because I don't have a huge following. But I do 5 or 6 major shows. My following 10x's,
Yeah.
then it's like, hey, give me this amount a month. It might not be a lot for a while, but I think it's the chicken or the egg argument. Like,
Yeah.
we'll have a small following and be like, why am I not getting money? I'm like, you got to build it first. And I think for me, with my skill set, the best way I can build it is just keep competing well, and keep going to the bigger shows. So I'm being a little more, I guess, patient and passive than Aaron is. But I think with the gym and that opportunity they gave me, I think I have the luxury of being able to do that.
Amazing. It's great to hear that obviously people won't see the dirty work of cleaning
Yeah,
the gym, doing sort of all the paperwork side of things, and all that fun stuff that goes into running a business.
yeah,
Um, but it is as important as your kind of strongman training because it goes hand in hand. Being able to do
sure.
one enables you to
Yeah,
do the other, I suppose. But yeah, it's great to hear, and hopefully the sponsors start to come in. Obviously, you
yeah,
mentioned these
we'll
big
see.
shows. If any sponsors are listening, go have a chat. He's a really good guy, and he's get on early because he's really going to be a competitor that's
Hmm.
going to blow up very soon. Um, you mentioned the talent that you competed with in that America's Strongest Man. We had Marcus Crowder, who's gone on to win OSG, is now at a Giants Live, has got a World's Strongest Man invite. Rob Kearney finished third, I think. He's a
Hmm.
regular World's Strongest Man and Giants competitor. And we kind of look at the wider North America scene, because there's so many guys in and around that scene that's
Hmm.
really are almost taking wins off each other at different competitions because of
Yeah,
the events and just the amount of talent that's seemingly in and around that area is incredible. What's it like to be a part of that sort of talent pool?
yeah. It's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because because there's a lot of decisions that go into things like Worlds invites.
Yeah.
A lot of, back and forth. And there's already 9 Americans invited, which I think might be the most there's ever been. And I can see pros and cons of that. Because it is a world show. Like, we want to represent the world evenly across the board. I think in some years, though, if you were honest about the top 30 in the world, 12 to 15 might be American. Um, but we're all competing in these same shows. So
Yeah.
like a guy who's maybe getting fifth at America's, you think, oh, he got fifth at America's, he's not that great. Um, I think you send him to like an England strongest or something, he just destroys,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of talent that just doesn't get to be seen. Because we're just competing with ourselves, and there's so many good guys. And the benefit, though, is when you do finally get that invite, you see that the Americans usually do well when they get that shot. Um, Mind you, I mean, there's a couple examples where they didn't, but I think most of the time, like you see, like as soon as Trey got on the scene, he's doing well. As soon as Bobby gets on the scene, he's doing well. Evan gets on the scene, he's doing well. You know, like or even like a little farther back, Martins, his first Giants was I think Giants Iceland, gets third,
So
right? Like by the time you get through the meat grinder that is, the American scene, you're ready, usually. Um, and I think there was three or four Americans in the final this last year. For sure,
yeah.
three. Yeah,
Um,
it's just
Trey,
Trey,
Brian, Evan.
Evan. I think that's it. Just three.
Yeah, three, I think.
Yeah. So I just it's a blessing and a curse. It's I mean we got a lot of great competitions here, a lot of great guys, just a lot of depth. You don't have to go very far to find great competition here, but it is hard to stand out in that group. So I'm very thankful for, America's coming up when it did and the events being there, and I got it done when it mattered.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that talent and that. The only time I really can think that we see a lot of the Americans go up against maybe obviously the Canadians and the European guys is a lot of the time at OSG.
Yeah.
Mainly because obviously you look at Giants Live and it's limited to sort of 10, 12 athletes. You look at Worlds,
Mhm.
obviously it's top 13, as you say, they want to spread those invites out just to almost make things fair. So as you say, it is Worlds.
Yeah.
And I mean, this year's OSG, you had Marcus winning, Wes Dewinski, who's a Canadian, coming second, and Nathan Goldtree, who finished third, and they've all achieved World Strongest Man invites. They've all got Giants Live invites. Um, I know you didn't compete at OSG. I believe there was like a little bit of an injury. Obviously, after you got the Arnold
Yeah.
UK invite, you kind of, again, going back to the conversations we've had on Instagram, I know you kind of wanted to manage your time. I know you're a guy that doesn't like doing 10, 15 shows a year like some guys
Yeah.
do. It's about managing your workload. We were maybe looking at the OSG lineup from this year and thinking you could have maybe wanted to really kind of put a marker down and go out and win that show and showcase what you could do.
Yeah, no, I mean, prior to deciding to go to Americas, um, I was prepping for OSG. I consciously decided, as much as I loved the events for Americas, I knew that OSG comes with an automatic invite.
Yeah,
Americas typically does not. There's been years where the winner gets no exposure whatsoever, and there's been years where people forget that guys like Brian Shaw and Poundstone and all kinds of guys. Like if you look back, there's a Wikipedia page of like all the podiums of Americas. It's an incredible group of guys. And it's unfortunate that that show doesn't come with any kind of auto invites. Um, because I think most years it's really deserved. Um, so long story short, I was prepping for OSG. I genuinely believed I could win. Um, I mean, I'd proven that I was competitive with guys like Crowder. I tied with Derwinski up in Canada.
yeah,
Got him on the countback to
yeah,
be second. He got third. Every show's different, and like I think you go, you know, five, 10 shows in a row. Those go either way between me and those guys. Like I really do respect Crowder, Goldtree, Derwinski, and a couple of the guys that are in the final. Like it would have been a dogfight all the way to the end. But at Americas, I kind of tweaked that bicep and I couldn't risk tearing it. And it was really that backpack medley with Gil Ruck
yeah.
circular sandbag. That sandbag took four people's biceps that weekend. Two open guys, one in warmups, one on the floor. Like that implement tore four biceps. And I had tweaked it doing the axle at Americas because I went from training no axle to going all the way up to a 470 axle.
Oh well,
Um,
it paid off in
so
the end.
yes, it did. But I knew that I was probably going to miss out on some big invites this year pulling out of OSG. But I couldn't, I figured that if I popped the bicep now or had a major injury now, I'm not big enough. Like people like the Arnold organizers would forget I exist. They would not roll that invite over. Um, I'd just be set back a year and I'd have to go do it again. Right. I think the only invite I could predictably say I would get again was North America's because I have a good relationship with JF and I podiumed this last year. So I couldn't roll the dice on that decision. So I'm kind of paying for it now. there's 9 Americans invited. I'm not one of them, and I think I can beat a few of them.
Yeah, it's
But I
pain.
didn't.
Go on.
Yeah, I didn't do the qualifier show, so
Yeah.
I get it. It's not they're not wrong for making decisions they're making. There's a lot of really talented guys going, and it's going to be exciting.
You know what? I think that's a very mature way of looking at things. I know there's a few guys that had maybe be sat there saying, "I'm America's strongest man. How can you say that I'm not deserved
Mm.
of being on world's strongest man?" Um, but as you say,
Well, I
you're
do
very
believe that though.
yeah. I know deep down you do, but there's a
I
very
do.
mature way of putting it out there, and some people would almost throw their teddy out of the cot and really be kicking up a fuss about this. And I know from
Mm.
conversations in private, um, you're very aware of what goes on in terms of getting
Mm.
these invites, in terms of putting yourself out there, and which shows you realistically need to do to get on the radar of these world
Yeah.
invites. And as you say, he unfortunately didn't do OSG, so it might have hurt your chances this year, but I feel like you've done it in the right way, that it's going to help your chances potentially
Yeah.
next year. And it's
Yeah.
about working towards 2025 now, and
Sure.
getting that world's invite. I'm guessing that ultimately is the goal for you, for yourself, is making that world's strongest man eventually.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. And like, if I could build to that point where I'm one of there's just a couple guys that get to do it, where it's, their 4 shows a year is basically the Arnold Strongest Man on Earth, World Strongest Man, and Rogue Invitational. I mean, that's the pinnacle. There's probably 5 guys a year that get to be in that circuit. That's the ultimate goal, is to get into that circuit. Um, and it's just going to take time. And I'm thankful for the Arnold UK, because I mean, in some sense, it is a little bit of a more minor show compared to those 4, but it is still put on by the Rogue team, and Rogue manages 2 of those 4 major contests. Um, that team gave me a chance. That team has their eyes on me, and I know that if I can perform in the UK, the odds of something like going to the Arnold Ohio next year or the Rogue Invitational, it's on the table. So I all I needed was a foot in the door with one of those organizations, and if I just had one critique and hope for the future of the sport, is that those organizations would start watching each other more in a respectful way. Because I've heard this from promoters where they they have their qualifying system. They're aware of these other great shows put on by other promoters, but because of past relationships or past negativity between organizations, they don't respect a win across the board, and it's to the detriment of the sport. I think the only promoter that is 100% just watching everything and being unbiased is Brian with
Yeah.
Strongest Man on Earth. I don't think he cares what nation guys are from. I don't think he cares what promotions those guys did well in. It's like he's just watching who did the best in all shows. There might be, I mean, everybody's got their own biases, but from an outsider's perspective, it appears that I like his picks the most. And
Mm.
I hope in the future these promoters can just watch the sport, and talent is talent, whether they did your promotion or not. Because there's a million reasons why we all have lives. There's a million reasons why we pick one show over another. It's not like we hate Giants Live or,
Yeah.
it's, this is what life happened with life, and I'm just trying to be the best strongman I can be. I hope somebody's paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we can probably do a full episode on
Sure.
strongman politics
Yes.
and what's happened, but obviously we're not going to delve too far into that,
Yeah.
because that's a very slippery slope, and we could be here for hours on end. Um,
Sure.
but I know exactly what you mean, and it is a lot of the time, past relationships that's maybe soured, or somebody's done something that somebody else didn't like, and it almost carries on. And I feel like grudges are held for a very long time in
Yeah.
this sport, seemingly, and it's yeah. I always feel like to grow the collaboration of these big organizations, the
Mhm.
big promoters, is probably going to be needed,
Yeah.
for us all to sort of kind of benefit from it. And obviously you guys as athletes especially, so it's a lot of the time, it's about time that a lot of the top guys were actual professional strongmen. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
there's too many still that are doing part-time jobs or having to do coaching on the side, just to kind of make ends meet. And I think to push this sport forward and increase the amount of sponsorship that we do get, it is time for a bit more collaboration.
Yeah.
But yeah. Speaking of Giants Live, is there a goal to go to one of those shows eventually as well? I know you mentioned earlier that it's maybe a lighter show and might not directly
Well,
benefit you, but
it would though. I mean, I still do see myself as a very athletic strongman.
yeah,
I got a pretty varied background. I'm not saying I would do bad
no,
in a giant show. I just if you make the log 430, six of the guys are going to fail, and I'm going to do reps, right?
nice,
Um, but so it's I would love to do giants down the road. I mean, there's no crowds like it on Earth, at least as consistently as what Giants has done. Like there's no strongman crowds like the UK at this point. I mean, you might be getting close with the Arnold and with Strongest Man on
yeah,
Earth. And it's just something I'd love to do. I thought there might have been a chance that I could have made it to the team show. There was some conversations happening, and it didn't pan out. Um, and I think there was a little fire in the belly too. When I was having those conversations about going to the team show, it was the day I was flying to America's Strongest. And when I
right,
got to America's Strongest, I found out I was not that final invite.
oh,
Because they were trying to find that replacement for Trey getting
yeah,
hurt. And I thought when I took off that I was going to be that guy, and when I landed, I was not that guy.
yeah,
So there's a little fire in the belly. Um, but yeah, no, I'd love to do Giants at some point, whether it's the team show or an individual show. I am a little more picky than most as far as spreading out my shows. Is it in these next year or two? Like the difference between me and a guy who wins World's Strongest Man is 1,000 pound deadlift, or there's just certain strength, or 440 stone for many reps and a stone off, right? Or one motioning really big stones. There's just certain things that I just need to get stronger in.
yeah,
And I think if I compete all the time, I won't take the time to get as strong as I need
yeah,
to be for that next set of goals. So I am going to be a little picky. Like I'm not going to be on the whole Giants tour.
yeah.
Um, but if it lines up, I'd love to do one or two. And
Nice.
I'd be really grateful for it.
Is the Arnold UK your first time competing over in England?
Yeah, it is. It
Ooh,
is. The only international I've done was the North Americas in Quebec, but I
right.
mean, it's not the same thing as going overseas.
Yeah, I think speaking to a few of you guys from America now, the crowds over in the UK are are completely different to what you'll be used to in the US. So it'd be fun to kind of get your reaction once you've competed at the Arnold UK and see what you think of a crowd in the UK.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're doing it in the same expo area that they've done in past years, but I've watched back the last few years of the Arnold UK. Just looks like an awesome crowd. Little smaller stage. Yeah, no, I'm really excited for that venue. It seems a little more crowd right on top of you
Yeah,
than Ohio. It's gonna be cool. And it looks like more seating than they had in Ohio, but it's kind of hard to say until you're there.
yeah.
But regardless, really excited.
Be an experience, definitely that I'm sure you'll enjoy, and it's going to be an exciting one to watch you compete in that sort of level now, and obviously with the incredible lineup that we've got. Um, I just want to kind of close on a word around North America's Strongest Man. Obviously, the amazing work that JF does putting that show on. You mentioned earlier that it doesn't get the love it maybe deserves, and I absolutely agree on that. The lineup was unbelievable this year. Obviously, Trey taking down the win, yourself second. We spoke about Wes finishing third, Maxime Boudreau fourth. We had the Lavallee brothers and
Yeah,
with
both the Rayums,
the
Joey
Williams.
Lavallee, who was a
Yeah,
finalist at OSG, and Spencer Remick. I
yeah,
think Remick kind of underperformed. I think he just took too many shows too close to each
yeah,
other. He was kind of hurting when he showed up.
yeah.
But it's
I think,
just four or five World's Strongest Man competitors in a 12-man
yeah,
show. I think it's just because the live stream's in French
yeah,
and they put it out on their
especially,
Facebook.
yeah,
It's not promoted quite right. It sounds like JF is hoping to have an English live stream this year,
Nice.
put out through a different means. So I'm pretty excited about that. But it was weird. Like we were like it's not a show that gets a lot of love from like Lawrence's channel or anything. Like a lot of people don't even know what happens.
No.
The whole Canadian circuit is that way.
Yeah.
And I think they're just like America, there's probably 10, 15 pros that are just coming up, knocking on the door of world class, and guys don't even know they exist. So if you want anybody watching, if you want to watch an very entertaining strongman, look up JF Circuit on YouTube. He puts a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah, those guys are churning stuff out, and they're really proactive at promoting the Canadian athletes, and especially through
Hmm.
Instagram. I know I think I got the results for the North America show from those guys that were sending it directly to
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
promote it. So I was really thankful that they were sending it out. Because as you say, the I tried to watch the live stream and it was on Facebook, but it was one in French, and I'm dreadful at any other language apart from English. I mean,
yeah.
I'm from Yorkshire in England, and some people say that it's not really English anyway, so that's always fun. But the kind of the angles that we're using as well, I feel like that could have been improved, and I know from speaking to a few people that I know JF's really putting some time into improve that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like they had a TV contract that they've done
Right.
the last, for quite a while. And it's very cool because they were asking in interviews prior to the show, like, what's your favorite old strongman show to watch? And I said, Fortissimus,
Yeah.
because I love watching that show back. And the dude behind the camera literally says, "Oh yeah, I filmed Fortissimus.
Oh
It's the
wow.
same film crew that's been filming strongman in Quebec for,
Right.
well over a decade." Um, so it was really cool. And when it finally did come out on TV, it's in French, but they did a very nice TV edit.
Right.
It kind of has like an old school strongman look.
Oh nice.
But I think JF's aware that like not focusing on the live coverage and doing like a later date TV coverage is kind of a thing of the past. So I think he's kind of leaning towards let's do some really good live coverage. So I hope that pans out this year.
Yeah, I hope so as well. And Erin let slip in her podcast that he's planning on doing a women's pro show as well.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
she she went away and checked that that was okay for her to say. She messaged me just after and went, maybe don't put that in just yet. Let me just check. And she went away and checked
Yep.
and went, absolutely fine. But yeah, another great platform to showcase the amazing strong
Hmm.
women of the world and the North American scene. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a fun year for yourself.
Yeah.
I can definitely say that. Which shows are you sort of cherry picking apart from obviously you've got Arnold UK, you mentioned the North American Strongest Man. Any other shows that you sort of got your eye on potentially?
I think I'm not getting myself too excited yet. I think the UK is going to determine a lot as far as what the next invites are. If no invites come, I'm excited by this year because I still get to do North Americas, and I'll probably go back to America's Strongest Man, potentially OSG. If no major invites come, those are still fantastic opportunities to showcase, and there's good money at those shows. But I obviously have my eye on Shaw Classic. I would love to go to that show. And I think there's been a couple people, reaching out that are like, you should do the Shaw Open. And I'm not opposed. I just already have the commitment to North America. It's very close to that. So it's kind of a toss up. And, Rogue Invitational is always the dream. It's one that I'd love to do, especially going overseas again. It's going to be cool. I saw that venue they put out. Um, we'll see what invites come. And, a lot of guys get hurt late in the game. Worlds is just a couple weeks after. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be in shape. I am a very short, inexpensive plane ticket for Colin Bryce and Darren to purchase. So
Yeah.
just on the chance that they're paying attention, I will be in shape for Worlds. So, I'm just going to keep my options open, staying excited, staying strong. There's great opportunities either way, and I'm just going to make the most of them.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun year for yourself. It's gonna be fun watching to see the results that you do put in. I said it in the opening that I definitely feel like you're a up and coming strongman, and you're gonna kind of blow up the scene at some point and be in and around these big guys. So from myself, I want to wish you best of luck this year.
Thank you, Ben.
But
Really
yeah,
appreciate it. And the support from everybody's been insane. Like, I put out that video after Americas of like, hey man, message these promoters. And I didn't expect it to be hundreds of people
Yeah.
messaging and tagging promoters to the point where I had multiple promoters DM me and be like, "Hey man, can you tell them to stop? Like we're watching you. We're impressed. We're gonna watch your future shows. You can stop now." And it's just a little bit of this invite to the UK was kind of a grassroots, people getting behind me. So and then like guys like you letting me be on the podcast, like it means a lot, man, because when you're up and coming, you don't get a lot of, exposure, and it means the world for somebody to be supportive. Because I don't have as much of it, so could not be more appreciative.
No, and thank you for taking the time out of your day for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it. It's been an amazing chat. I hope people have enjoyed listening along. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's a lovely place to stop. If you
Hmm.
guys aren't following Lucas on social media, I'll be tagging him in our Instagram
Hmm.
posts. It'll be go follow him, follow along with his journey, and absolutely, it's going to be a fun 2024 for himself.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I want to say once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day for joining us.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me. And if I'm going to be putting out a lot of like basically every day in the UK, I'm bringing um, a guy that helps us with some media stuff.
Oh, nice.
So if you want to check out my YouTube, we're going to be doing basically daily coverage of the Arnold UK. So you check that out on my YouTube.
Nice. If you can't get along to those shows, go follow Lucas's YouTube. You can see behind the scenes at the Arnold UK, which is great. But yes, I want to say thank you to Lucas Hatton and thank you to everybody who's taken the time out of the day to listen along to this podcast. And we will catch you on the next one.